Welcome to Bovine Banter with the Penn State Extension Dairy Team. I'm Ginger Fenton, an educator with the Extension Dairy Team. Throughout this series of the Bovine Banter podcast, we are focusing on farm safety. In this episode, I will be talking with the Nationwide Insurance Early Career Professor of Agricultural Safety and Health at Penn State, Dr. Florence Becot. Thank you very much for being here, Dr. Becot. We look forward to learning more about your work in ag safety and health and how it pertains to dairy farms.
Thanks so much for having me.
Can you please tell us about your role at Penn State and give an overview of your research interests?
Yes, happy to. So I started my position at Penn State in January 2024, so just a little over a year ago. And I was hired to lead the Ag Safety and Health program, which is based in the Department of Agricultural and Biological Engineering. The program has been in existence since 1976, so we will be celebrating its 50 years next year. And I'm also a faculty member in the department. And by training, I'm a rural sociologist. And in terms of what my research looks at, I look at farm families' social and economic needs and how that intersects with safety, health, well-being, and economic viability.
The Penn State Ag Safety and Health Program is recognized for leadership in extension programming. What are some of the initiatives or programs that your team is working on?
So we like to say that we are a small but a mighty team. There are two of us full-time who do extension work, myself and Linda Fetzer. And also we have Marty Mondock, who does excellent work at supporting the programs in the shop and getting us ready. But some of the things that we do is we have the National Safe Tractor and Machinery Operation Program. So there are only two curriculums like this in the country to do tractor safety training for youth, ours at Penn State and the one at Purdue University. And basically what we do is we work with educators. They can be extension educators, they can be ag teachers in high school to help certified youth who are 14 and 15 years old to drive tractor. And that's the certification that's required if they want to work on the farm of a non-family member. If they drive on the farm of a family member, they don't need a certification. So this is something that we've done for many years. We also have the ropes rebate program. So this is a program that helps farmers get a ROPS, a rollover protection structure on their tractor. In Pennsylvania, tractor rollover death is the leading cause of death on farms. And we know that there are a lot of older tractors on farms in Pennsylvania. They run great still. People don't want to get rid of them, but we help install the safety feature. Other things that we do, we have over 200 resources online, and we're constantly adding. So these are articles, videos, reports that people can go look at their own time. We're really focusing on the practical aspects of safety, talking through what the hazards are and what people can practically do on the farm. And so we have topics such as machinery and equipment, animal handling, youth safety, emergency preparedness, PPEs as well. And recently, as I've come into the program, we've added our offering of topics as I'm bringing in the health side of things. So we have some articles on access to health insurance for farmers. We have some on resources for mental health, and children's safety is also something that I'm interested in. And then if we have listeners from Pennsylvania or anywhere, we're currently recruiting a new trainer. We are really excited to be adding to the team. One of the things that we've done over the years is the Ag Rescue training program. So this is a program where we work with first responders in Pennsylvania, but also in the Northeast more broadly, to help them know how to respond to an emergency on the farm when one happens. And so, for example, just in the last 6 months, we know of a couple of people who were entrapped in grain bins in Pennsylvania, and we know that fortunately the first responders had gone through the training and had the tools to do successful rescues and save the lives of farmers and workers. And so this new person that we're looking to bring back into the program with us will lead those trainings and do farm safety trainings with farmers. So there are a lot of other things that we could be talking about, but I think I can stop here for now.
You're a very busy small team, very productive, it sounds like.
Yes. Well, the other thing too I didn't mention is one of the things that we do very frequently is we'll go to farm events, to farm shows. We're either invited, like for example, on Saturday I was in Port Trevorton in Snyder County, and there was a big farm and family safety events where about 400 people came out, and we had some demonstrations around PTO, as well as hazard hunt for children, to talk to folks about the safety on the farm and and what they can do to keep themselves safe. So we are, we do our best to respond to requests when they come in, and it's always a privilege to receive an invitation and to go spend time with people and learn about here their day to day and what things are working like on the farm and what's not working for them.
Thank you for mentioning that. I believe that's one of the things that Penn State Ag Safety is known for, the demonstrations and the hands-on practical approaches. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
You're
This
right. And, there's more to it, actually. So we have about 12 or 14 different demonstrations. Some are what we call tabletop demonstrations. They fit on the table. So for example, I just mentioned this hazard hunt, which picture a miniature farm that has over 50 different hazards. And it's an activity that we do with different people, with children, with farmers, with people who don't have experience with farming. I'm actually going to be bringing it to my class of juniors and seniors on Thursday for my ag safety and health class, as we were talking about hazard identification and risk assessments. We also have tabletops around grain bin safety, where we talk about how quick someone can get engulfed. But I'm saying this because those demonstrations and tabletops are available to people in Pennsylvania if they want to borrow them. Some will fit in the back of your car. Some you might need a pickup truck. Some we will have to bring to you because they're bigger and they need to be on Penn State trailers. And we have, things connected to a tractor tilt cab to talk about tractor stability. So we have all that information on the website as well. And those can be used by 4-H, first responders, Farnborough County events, and we send them out about 12 to 14 times each year that they are borrowed, and we'd be happy to send them out more.
great, and I can attest I have borrowed many of them over the years and used them at various events. So thank you.
Yes, and we're always looking for new ideas on what new demonstration could we create, and what are new emerging issues in agriculture that we need to be talking about, and that we could do it through demonstrations. So send those suggestions our way.
Will do. I know that much of your research has focused on farm families. How do you see family dynamics playing a role in farm safety for each generation on the farm?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it depends, is my answer. No, but in all seriousness, I've seen it a lot in my work around children safety, and around people's level of comfort around what is safe or not. What I see, some of the ways that it varies is if people grew up on farms or if they didn't. I find that when I talk to folks who have grown up on farms, there might be 5, 6, 7 different generations. And most of them will say that they know someone who got hurt really badly or passed away. And when I talk to folks too, there is this very high acute awareness that this is a dangerous occupation. And sometimes, in particular with older generations, there is a sense of, well, this is what it is. This has always been this way. This is a dangerous job. But then when I talk to younger generations, there is a sense that there is more engagement in safety and wanting to do something. Not to say that it doesn't happen with older age groups, but I think what's happened is as people who are now middle-aged and younger, they grew up with seatbelts in cars. They grew up with going to school when we talked about wearing a helmet when riding their bikes. And so there is that sense of we now have generations that have been around safety messages their entire lives. That is just part of who they are. And we've also seen it too with people who are not from farm background, and I've seen it a lot where maybe you have maybe it's a couple and they have young children, and maybe the mom is not from a farm background, but married into a farm family. And I've heard them talk about how I can't believe that this is happening with my in-laws. I don't feel that my children are safe. And I will tell you, I've seen it lead to tensions of people getting upset at each other. It's been interesting too, being out at farm events. And we have last year during Ag Progress Days, we had to focus on ATV safety. And so we had flyers on ATV safety. And more than once, I had mothers coming to me and say, I've been telling my husband for years they shouldn't be doing X, Y, or Z, because the recommendation is that for the youngest children, and we're talking, less than 10, like an ATV might not be the best thing for them to do. And I've seen them take the recommendations, take the flyers and say, I'm going to take that to my husband. Or I've had one drag her husband to the table and say, see, uh, and so I have these discussions too with my class this semester. Several of my students are from farm backgrounds. And it's been really interesting too to safety is a very private thing. And I think that safety too can be part of someone's identity and someone's culture. And I actually have a colleague in the United Kingdom who did research around safety and level of awareness. And she was finding that, so we usually talk about how men take more risk than women. And she was saying that in the research that she did, she was seeing women taking more risk because they wanted to be perceived as real farmers. They wanted to be seen as, I'm one of you. And so they were doing things that usually we might see more teenage boys do. Maybe not as bad. And so I thought it was really interesting too, that aspect of I take risk, therefore I'm a farmer, is a really interesting one. But at the same time, by the same token, I've talked to so many farmers who are worried and tell me that they are constantly worried that the children could get hurt. So it really depends. It ranges the gamut, really.
That leads into my next question and thinking about health insurance coverage. That can be a huge challenge for some farmers. Can you please tell us about the issues surrounding that challenge and options or resources that are available to farmers?
Yeah, so health insurance is a topic where I've done a lot of work, in particular a few years ago, after we had the Affordable Care Act being enacted, and we were looking at how farmers are responding, how the new options are impacting the farm sector. But what we know over the years is that as a group, farmers have been insured at higher rates. And it's not surprising, right? It's a very dangerous occupation. It's one of the most dangerous. You know that if you get hurt, it might impact your ability to work. We also know that it will negatively impact your farm business. And so we know that, from the work that I've done, that about over 90% of farmers had health insurance. But the big, big but is that there was this issue of underinsurance. And it's the idea that people had plans, but those plans would not cover them well enough in case of a problem. Sometimes they're called skinny plans. And sometimes, people are favor lower premiums, in particular, if they're buying their plans directly through an insurance agent or through the marketplace. People might favor, again, that lower monthly cost. But what we found is that the biggest level of challenges when we ask people, are you concerned about your ability to pay for major medical expenses without going into debt? We had over 60% that said, yes, I'm concerned in one way or another. And then when we look to see like what's the variation, who is more likely to say that, it was interesting that it wasn't based on how big a farm is. It wasn't based on what commodity they're producing. Really what we found is what was the quality of the coverage? Did they have low deductibles, low out of pockets? And it's really what made the difference is how protected you are when you really need that insurance plan. The one thing that we say and relevant for Pennsylvania, where we have a lot of dairy farmers, is we know that when we look at rates of an insurance, dairy farmers are most likely to not have insurance. Some of the USDA research says it's about 50% around of dairy farmers who don't have insurance, and that's a national level. And really what we have going on here is the off-farm job. We know that having an off-farm job, and about 2/3 of farm families have off-farm jobs, a lot of it has to do with the extra income, but for many people, it's also the health insurance coverage. And it's making sure that one household member gets that coverage, and so that the rest of the family is covered, so that they don't have to spend $25,000 in premiums per year. And so that means that off-farm jobs are really important, but we've also heard about how that creates, like, people want to spend more time on the farm. And what we've heard too is how people are making decisions around their farm production. I've had farmers say on purpose, I'm keeping my farm income lower so that I can qualify for Medicaid, or so that at least my children can qualify for Medicaid or for CHIPS. It has different names depending where you live. And so really what we found is it leads to some crazy decision making. And we often talk about the importance of being rational business owners. And I remember years ago, it was a Wisconsin farmer, I was living in Wisconsin at the time, who said, I'm asked to make rational decisions for my business, but I have to be rational so that I know that my family has health insurance coverage, because this is just such a dangerous job. So that was a long answer to your question, Ginger, but but I can cover the resources if you want.
Sure, please.
Yeah, so in terms of the resources, um, it depends on people's goals. What I like to say is it depends on what are people's goals for their families, for their farm business. We talked about a farm job as being a really important source of health insurance. It can be tricky depending on where you live, because we know that in rural areas, local employers tend to be less likely to offer benefits, or the quality might not be as good. So it depends where you live. There is also options to buy health insurance through the marketplace. In Pennsylvania, it's called pennies. And this is where you can go on the website and see if you qualify for tax incentives to lower the premiums. And so this is based on your income. And what's interesting too is the farm assets do not count towards the qualification for whether or not you might qualify for a tax saving. And that was it was a game changer when the law came around mid 2010s, because it used to be that I think your business assets used to be included, and as a business owner you'll get over that line pretty quick. The other thing too is you can work directly with an insurance agent, and see what plans they offer. And in that case, if you buy a plan through them, you might not be able to qualify for the tax premiums or the tax savings, but it depends on your situation. And you might get a better deal by working directly with an insurance agent, an insurance broker, the insurance company differently. So every people's situation is different. I mean, even myself, I spent years researching health insurance, and I kid you not, every time I've needed to pick a plan, I don't know what I'm looking for. And also, I don't know if I'm going to get cancer in 6 months and what my expenses are going to be. I don't know if I'm going to break a leg. I don't know if I'm going to be fine until the last day of my days. And so I think it's sort of like the reality of we're being asked to make choices that are impossible to make. At least that's how I think about it. But at Penn State Extension, we do have the health insurance literacy team that puts out webinars on a regular basis for the curriculum Smart Choice, Smart Use, that really talks through, okay, you're going to pick a plan. These are the things to look for. I've used the curriculum myself when I needed to figure out what health insurance I was going to pick. I found that curriculum to be very helpful. And there is also, through the Active Health team, we have a couple of articles as well on health insurance. One is about helping people navigate the health insurance marketplace. So the open enrollment goes from mid-November until mid-January, and so it's talking people through, okay, these are things to think about, these are additional resources. And then most recently with a graduate student, we wrote an article on health insurance options for farm workers. And why we did that is because with farm workers, there is a lot of variations in terms of what they might be eligible for. And so in the article, we talk about what do you do if your farm worker is a citizen or permanent resident versus if they are on a work visa versus if they are not documented. Because the reality is that on many of our farms in Pennsylvania and across the country, we have workers with a lot of different types of status. And I remember that was also a few years ago when I was living in Wisconsin and I was talking with a dairy farmer, Brian, who had, I think he had over 2,000 dairy cows. He was making over 2,000 big cows and of course had several workers. And I remember him telling me as we were walking through his barn saying, I'd love to be able to offer health insurance coverage to my farm workers. I can't because of the way the system is designed. And so what he had found, what he was doing is he would give those workers, when they would go to the doctor, he would pay for their healthcare bill to help them. And so in that article too, what we did is we included not only the very the information that you'll find in other places around this is how you can get plans and this is how to access healthcare, but we also shared about what we've heard farmers do over the years to support their workers. Because the other thing too that we've heard from many farmers is they're like, I love to offer health insurance to my workers. The reality is I can barely get paid for myself or I don't have it. And so this article too, but at the same time, it's a dangerous job. It can be difficult to attract and retain workers. So being able to offer benefits is seen as important. And so, that we try to think through a lot of different scenarios to help people navigate whatever situation they might be in.
Those are definitely some things to think about. I also know some of your research has focused on childcare on the farm. Talking about benefits and what employers can do
Mhm.
makes me think about this. What are some of the considerations for childcare that are relevant to farm families? And as they explore their options, are there things that they should keep in mind? And another part to the question, where they can go for guidance. I know I threw several things at you there.
Yeah, so childcare is another big one, right? Health insurance is like, it's been, we've talked to farmers who've said like, man, health insurance is really the thing that's keeping me from growing my business. Health insurance costs are impacting how much farm investments I can do on the farm. Childcare is another version of this. And it's interesting because often we talk about how it's wonderful to have children on farms. Like people love raising the children on the farm. But then sometimes, there are days when you just can't have them around. Like there are days when you need to do the work with the heavy equipment and it's just not safe to be there. Or I've also talked to farmers who say, if I was a nurse, no one would expect me to bring my child to work. Why am I expected to have my child around? So it's interesting, right? Because it feels like those are things that are not necessarily often talked about and that people were almost afraid of admitting, because when you admit this, it's almost like you don't love your child. And I think these folks love their child as much as the next person. But what they were saying is, one I remember said she had a ADHD, I think, like deficient attention disorder, and she was like, I can't have the young kids when I'm driving a big tractor. I just can't. And in our national study that we've done, is we had over 2/3 of farm, 3/4 of farm families that we talked to had experienced a form of childcare challenges in the last 2 years. It's a lot. And those were, we only talked to people who had at least one child under 18. So that was relevant for this group, right? And that was connected to the cost. The cost was a big one. The availability, is it even around? The quality, do I trust does that align with my values? Does that feel safe for my children? And the other thing too is that people talked about childcare for the youngest, but also how school plays an important role. When the children are in school, I remember plenty of our moms said, I finally had time to do things for a few hours. And so some of the resources, it depends on, we had a lot of people who relied on family members or friends, where they would provide, during the day, a few hours a day, or when there was something really big to work on, they would, have mom or the mother-in-law come. Um, and I think like traditionally, that's how we've thought about childcare in agriculture, right? It is informal. It is your family members who help, and everything is great. But when we really started asking specifically about those questions, we were hearing different stories. We were hearing people who said, I don't have a family nearby. I just don't. And so I'm stuck. Or we were hearing people who said, I don't trust my in-laws. And that's the family dynamics piece that runs right back in. We were hearing from folks who said, I love for my mom to look after my children, but she's still working, or she has Alzheimer, and I'm caring for two generations. Um, so I think it's been really interesting to have those conversations around childcare with farm families when we haven't had them very often. But in terms of what solutions based on what's available at the moment, I mean, there is the importance of family and friends. We've heard a few folks that have tried to do um, childcare co-op groups with farmers, but not too often, like with other farmers in the area. And it does require some coordination. And I think the other thing too is, do how are they with safety on their farms? If your kids goes to their farm, are you comfortable with the way that they do things? Like, this is a real thing to think about. Um, and then, childcare providers, maybe they were home-based. We know that was the most popular options because home-based is more flexible. My mom was actually a childcare provider her entire career. And I remember children getting dropped off at 6:30 in the morning because parents had to go to work. And some children not getting picked up until 8 at night because that's when they had to work. And so that flexibility is really important for farmers, depending on the time of the year, um, because they don't work a 9 to 5. So I think that's the thing. But in terms of resources too, there are resources at the state level that can help families navigate childcare. I'm not going to remember what they're called, but there are people that can help you look at your childcare options in your area, and can look to does your income qualify for anything? But with the challenge with the childcare, financial support, is that they often include business assets, and that makes it tricky for people to qualify.
Sure, that would be tougher for farmers. You touched on this, and I completely agree and have heard it many, many times as well that the farm is a great place to raise children. As
Mhm.
we think about that, can you offer some insight for how we can safely incorporate children into tasks on the farm? It's how we weigh that and how we balance what they should and shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, and I think, based on the parents that I've talked to over the years, they do that intuitively already, which is the idea that you adjust how you give task and what you ask children to do based on their age. But maybe the age is a marker, but more like physically. Uh, their physical development, their social development, their motor skills, their social skills. Can they understand instructions? And so the idea is that you want to match the task that you give children based on those abilities. And so, for example, when they're the youngest, they can, and really will depend on the kind of farm that you have, and it's not going to apply for everyone. But when they're the youngest, maybe they can work around the baby animals as you feed them. If you're bottle feeding, it can have like help with very little task, and really at that age they're not really helping that much to be faster to do it without them, but it is an introduction, right, for them. What I've seen too, of parents with younger kids is they have play areas in the barn or whatever part of the farm they're working in. When they're youngest, they are in strollers, and I think I've talked to plenty of mom who said, when they're in the stroller, I know they're not running around, and they have toys and snacks. But it is really, for many of them, it's a juggling act, right? It is about, how long can they stay? kid stay put in the stroller while you get things done. And I think to me, what's always interesting is we think that it's the parents who decide, but oftentimes it's the children who do as well, or they play a big role. And so I've talked to moms who said, and of course, those were little boys. They're like, my kid is like, tractors are magnets to them. And so they always want to run towards the dangerous pieces. And so it gets them really scared that they actually want to keep them in the house. Because otherwise, when they're young and they run quick, like you can lose sight of them very quickly. And then there's also been instances where parents said, I had all these grand plans for when I was going to have children, and they were going to come with me, and it was going to be awesome. And their kid just screams the whole time, hates it. And so I think there's only so long that you can take of the screaming. But it really depends, right? But as children get older, they can totally do more things, and they can, safely and with close supervision. But what I thought was interesting is when we were talking with women and we were asking them how they navigate the farm and the children and home. Earlier on, they would talk about how, the physical needs and how I need to make sure they're clean, they have a clean diaper, they're fed, they're warm, and then they're ready to go. But they take a lot of time, right, to make sure they're okay. And there was this sense of like, oh, well, it will get easier when they get older. And then moms with older children would be like, yes and no. Sure, they become more independent. And like one big marker of things were getting easier for the parent was when the older sibling could drive and then could start driving their siblings around. It didn't mean they weren't scared to have teenagers driving, but that helped a lot. But another thing that they talked about was how with older children you spend more time talking in their emotional development. They're asking questions, and some that are hard. You have to help them navigate some big emotional things that might be happening, which is a lot harder to navigate than, are they fed? Do they have a clean diaper? Good, ready to go.
So another area in which I know you've done quite a bit of work, we have worked together, is farm stress. We could do an entire episode and just talk about farm stress. With that in mind, is there anything that you'd like to share about farm stress, such as new programs or recent research that you think might be of interest to our listeners?
Yeah, and I promise that's my last big area of research. After that, I'm out of it. I'm out. You're just hitting all of the big ones. For several years, I've been working on the topic of mental health with colleagues in the Midwest. And we've been focused very much on what do responses look like to mental health challenges in agriculture? What are programs and resources like? And also, how do farmers engage with them? Going back to that cultural piece, we often talk about how farmers, they're tough, they don't want to talk about their problems, they don't want to seek help. And for a chunk of farmers, that's certainly true. That rings true based on the work that we've done. But what I found to be some of the biggest barriers around seeking help was, first of all, the health insurance piece. Like if I go talk to someone, go to my healthcare provider to talk about how I haven't slept for days, how my stress levels are making it so that I'm not eating, how the mental health piece is really impacting the physical health, right? If you decide to go to your doc, like there's going to be a cost. Am I ready for this? It also takes time out of the day. Does the insurance cover behavioral health? It depends, right? Not everybody's plan does. And so what we've really looked at, what explains or why do farmers seek or not seek help when they experience challenges? We're looking at mental health, but we're also looking at financial well-being, because we know that in agriculture, often financial and mental health challenges have a connection at some point, somewhere. We tend to talk in agriculture a lot about the stress of farm transition. And one thing that often is woven to farm transition is not only who's going to take the farm over, but how are the assets going to be divided? What are mom and dad going to live on in their later years? Which sibling is getting what? I mean, a lot of it is money related. Then we look at commodity prices. That's connected to money. How much is coming into the farm? We look at input prices. How much have they been going up? How much are they eating into margins, profit margins? So really what we wanted to do, what we're looking at in research at the moment, and we're doing interviews with farmers, is we're asking about how they navigate these different aspects. And what we're seeing, what we found so far is that what I always like to do in my research too is ask about ability and willingness, because to me, those are two different things. We can be willing to do something, but if we don't, but we might not be able to, right? It's like, sure, I'm willing to eat 5 fruits and veggies a day the way I'm supposed to. But if I live in an area where it's the winter, so there's not much growing, nothing is growing, I'm getting tired of canned beans, and the local supermarket doesn't have the produce looks like, it's been sitting there for a while. Am I gonna eat those separate? Am I able to get the things that I want to eat? So it's a bit like that, right? I mean, on a much more grave topic, but what we found is that what we have been hearing from people we've been talking to is they are willing to seek out help. And the biggest barrier has been, are they able to? Is the help around it, or is it in a way that they want it? And another thing too that I really try to pay attention to in my research is, we talk a lot about mental health in agriculture, and a lot of the programming is focused on farmers, and it's focused on, here is how you recognize the signs of stress, and here's what you can do at your own level. However, we know that oftentimes challenges in agriculture are connected to things that are outside of their power. They're connected to, there was just an announcement of tariffs. I don't want to get political here, but how is that going to impact agriculture? It's going to impact people one way or another. And so it's to illustrate the point that we can say all day long that we can do better, be better at self-care. But when the challenges are coming from something that we don't really control, and that goes on for a while, I think my concern is always, if we do programming where we focus on fixing people and not fixing the bigger problems, um, to what extent might we be going the wrong way? Or to my extent, might we lose people who might say, and I've heard it talking to farmers being like, I'm not the problem here. I felt that way in my own life sometimes. When I was a little down, I was like, I'd be doing much better if these things weren't happening, and there's nothing I can do to change them, right? And I know that a behavioral health person would say control on what you can focus on what you can control. But at some point as human, it's hard to not also fixate on the things that we cannot control and they're playing a big role in how we're feeling. So yeah, that's some of the mental health work that we've been doing, and really calling attention to, if we want to support the mental health of farmers, there's absolutely the need for making sure that behavioral health care is available across the country. We know that many rural areas it's a healthcare desert of some sort. And so it might take 6 months to get an appointment. So we definitely need to be working on this piece and make sure it's affordable so that when people want it, it's there. But I think when we think about the Farm Bill, what are there ways that the Farm Bill can be leveraged to make sure that some of those financial stressors are not as strong? And the other part of my work too that I've been doing is health insurance and childcare are huge sources of stress for farm families, and we haven't talked about that yet. But over and over again, people have said how much stresses they impart on people's lives, in particular young families who are growing their families and are growing their farm business at the same time. And so to what extent too can we think about these aspects of supporting farmers and their families so that they can have a strong, viable farm business and live off of it? And I will tell you, when I asked the question recently to farmers, what would make it easier for you to navigate your farm business and looking after the children, the number one answer out of 18 different options was health insurance, and 3/4 of them said that. And we had people who were operating over 100 people, 800 people responded to that survey. We had people who operated a third of an acre farm, like a garden farm, literally, all the way to people who were like thousands of acres, and we don't find a difference in how people responded. And to me, like that's the telling story. And I've seen this with the health insurance research is those are issues that impact all of us because we're all people. And at the end of the day, as different as we might be from, we think we might be different from one another, we have some similar basic needs of we need roofs over our heads, food, and we need to be able to take care of our health and our families.
Yes, I think that sums it up very nicely. If you'd like to share any final thoughts with our listeners, you're welcome to do that.
Well, I know this will air soon, so I will say it again. We are looking to hire a new person to join our team based in on main campus here in University Park, but work around the state. And so, you know, if anyone has ag experience, first responders experience, safety experience, I'd love to talk to them. My email is florence.becot@psu.edu. And yeah, I mean, in general, you know, at the Ag Safety and Health program at Penn State, really the priority is what can we do to support our farming communities so that they can continue the work that they want to do? And I'm always interested in hearing from folks around are there things that we could be doing, or maybe we don't have the information on the website. Maybe we don't have an article about something, but I'm sure we can find something to help. So we're also here to pick up the phone and answer emails and be of service on topic connected to safety and health. And when I don't know something, I will say, and I will find someone who has the answer.
Thank you very much, Dr. Becot, for talking with us today. Thank you to our listeners. Don't forget to tune in to our next series as the Bovine Banter team continues to explore topics related to dairy production.